was called, the one that got played nationally was called Made in the Shade. It was about Sacramento's urban forest and the history of it. We actually used the song Sacramento, done by that group Middle of the Road.
All right.
Yeah, they were kind enough to let us use their song, which most people in this country don't even know about that song. That's something that was big in your country, but not here. But yeah, so that was pretty cool. That one's got the most notoriety. The other one was called Death of Del Paso, which was about a town in North Sacramento that was a really nice town until the highway system came in 1947 and cut it off and turned it into a really dangerous place to be. So it was kind of like that cartoon Cars, but in real life.
And Zadie, what do? You're in the music side of things, are you?
Yeah, I'm in music, and I'm a father, and I do, as far as work, I write like plugins for drum machines, like people that want to program, but they're not drummers.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then the paranormal, I'm always investigating that, always filming, and it's like been a obsession. But lately, and you probably have the same problem too. The whole thing about even finding anything horror, a real horror, or manufactured horror, or UFOs, or all these things.
Recording in progress.
It throws the belief system out. It's hard to know, where the power is coming from. So I've been having a little bit of any trouble with that. But yeah, man, I read, and I was asking you before we went off, what sign are you?
Aries.
March or April?
April. Yeah.
Wow.
And my second wife is Aries as well, and we are very similar in our attitudes. And yeah.
Wow. Aries, I can deal with that. I love Eric Nash all day. My uncle, my favorite uncle, he was on the 10th.
Right.
Hey, Allan.
We record right now, right?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
We are. We're back in business.
Okay.
Allan, I was going to ask you, who are some of the team of writers that you have for your magazine? You have some good writers.
Well, it's the Field of Dreams thing, okay? Because particularly with Infinity. So my wife said to me, "Why don't we do another magazine?" And I said, "Well, yeah, okay." I don't know as much about science fiction as I do about horror, but I know a fair bit. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll just see how far we can get into this, because we did do Infinity before back in the day with my partner, and he closed it after about 5 issues because he wasn't making enough money. And in this instance, I thought, I don't know how long I'm going to go on with this. But then suddenly, all these great writers who've been they've been working for magazines. It's like there are people I've got like Mark Phillips. Mark Phillips is a good example. Worked on Starlog, and a lot of these people worked on Starlog a long time ago. Fangoria's sci-fi version, and they came to me and said, would you be interested in something on? And no matter how obscure, in fact, the more obscure it was, the better. So there's a panel. Well, I've never met him, but there's a guy called Greg Coulon, who knows a lot about Willis O'Brien and people like that. He's coming out to London this year. We're going to meet up at last. And he said, he would put stuff to me that was so obscure. And he said to me, have you ever seen Skullduggery, the Burt Reynolds film? And I said, yeah. And he said, that'd be a good feature, wouldn't it? Now, most people would say no, because how many people have seen that film?
Another area.
Yeah. But it's like the Colossus the Forbin project, which is another favourite of mine from back in the day. And he chucks his names at me, and I go, yeah, that would be good, that would be really good. And so it is with my general writers. Kim Newman is very popular. I've known Kim for a long time, and so he does a column. He's quite a big journalist over here, and I just let him write about what he wants to write about. So that's what he does. But a lot of these people are friends of mine going way back. And yes, of course, I also do you know, accept stuff from writers who've not had things published, because I know, and this is very true, this is my own entry into the world of journalism, was I was working at Waitrose, and I'd just come back from a 6 month holiday around the country, and I started working back at Waitrose, and my girlfriend at the time, well, she became my girlfriend when I came back to work at Waitrose. She introduced me to her dad and said, "Oh well, he's been off work for 6 months and travelling around the country, and he wasn't impressed by that." And then it was a case of, oh yes, but he's maybe working as a fruit and vegetables manager or whatever it was at the time, but he's really a writer." And he said, "Yeah, sure, that's sure, that's true." And one day I went round to her house, and she had this little thing called a petite typewriter. It's a little girly typewriter they used to have, little plastic to type on. And why don't you write something? So I wrote something for about my collecting 8mm horror films. So I used to collect these little short versions, cut down versions of horror films, and I sent it to House of Hammer magazine, and they published it. And they paid me like £75, which is quite a lot of money back in the day. And then I got the flavour of it, if you like. I got the bug, and I started sending everybody stuff, and I started getting everything published, and people were publishing it all over the place. And I suddenly started to realise that was how I got into things. But if somebody if DSCN, who's now a good friend of mine, who's a publisher of House of Hammer, I would credit him, because if he hadn't said, "I'll publish this," I probably would have just worked at Waitrose the whole of my life. You know, that I would have thought, you know, there's no money in this, I'm not very good at it, and I would have given up. And so therefore, I always feel that when I get stuff in from people, I would always look at it, because I think there might, and I found some really good writers who are probably not full-time writers, but they are good at it, just need the break to. But the trouble is, and I feel guilty, really, because we pay every writer who writes for us £100 for a feature. And these are great writers, some of them. Kim Newman can earn a lot more than that elsewhere. You know, John Hamilton is a great friend of mine. I'll say he'll give me 6,000-7,000 word feature for £100. You know, and I feel guilty. And I've had people come along and say, "Well, we won't write for you, you know, unless you pay. How much do you pay per 1,000 words?" And I go, "Look, sorry, that's what we pay. Well, we don't. At least we pay. It's not a case of we earn something." And a lot of magazines don't pay a bean, you know, for their writers nowadays, because they do this thing which I hate. They go, "Oh, you need, you know, we'll give you the exposure," but no, that's not good enough, really. You know, and to be honest, you know, I am very grateful that a lot of my writers write for me for that rate, because it's not a very good rate. I mean, I was like I say, I was being paid £75 back in 1979. So you know, if you do the maths on that, but there is also a different world nowadays, because when I actually went on to edit Penthouse magazine for some years,
wow.
You know, in the UK.
Right on.
And yeah, and when I did that, because I worked on a lot of adult magazines, that's a different part, but that's probably how I made most of my money, to be honest. Not dancing. But when I was working on Penthouse, they were selling, you know, 500,000 copies a month. And when they closed, they were selling about 5,000 copies a month, because the internet had come along. People didn't want to pay for that kind of stuff, and so the magazine industry is, you know, no magazines sell vast amounts anymore, and that's all there is to it. You know, but you have to do you know, we sell enough to make a profit every month, so we're happy with that. But it's very difficult, and you know, it's a tough thing. But I don't know about you, but I do like to have a proper magazine to hold, and I don't really like to just have something extra.
Right.
I mean, it's the same thing, but yeah.
Allan.
Yeah, you know.
Allan. Oh, I'm sorry, Zendy. Allan, I know what you mean by not getting paid a bean, because I work for three paranormal magazines, and I work for Costa Rica Times. And my articles, I don't get paid for it. I just get a lot of exposure, which is cool. But I used to also too work for 3 comic book magazines when I was in the comic book industry, and those magazines actually paid me for my articles. But my paranormal articles, I mean, I get a lot of exposure. I get people writing me stuff and everything else, which is cool. But yeah, I don't get paid for any of my articles for those paranormal magazines.
That's why I think a lot of my writers are, well, a certain number of them are my kind of age, and they just enjoy writing.
Yes.
John Hamilton is one of my favourite writers. He writes. He was saying to me the other day he's writing like a 20,000 word piece on the Damned for Little Shop of Horrors. And he probably won't get any paid for that at all. But he's doing it because he enjoys it. And I've done the same thing. I get into trouble with my wife actually because when there's one of our good friends, Dennis Bickle, who's sadly no longer with us. He had a company called Hemlock Books, and they published a thing called Fantastic 50s and Sensational 60s. And he would just say to me, "Can you write an article for me for this?" And I'd go, "Yeah, what is it?" And usually because I write quite quickly, I'd just send it to him, and he would pay me like £40 for it. And then now in the later incarnation after Dennis died, they asked me to write for it, and they don't pay me anything. But I still go, "Yeah, okay." It's because it's just the job. If you enjoy doing it, and they might ask you to do articles on things. I had a classic example where the guy who runs the magazine said to me, I'm sure, I don't know if I'm going to do that or not, but he said to me, "Can you do something? We're doing a 60s issue. Can you do something on the Warlord?" I really like that film, Charlton Heston. So I said, "Yeah, I'll do the Warlord. I love that." Anyway, I did it literally over the next few hours and sent it in straight away. And he said, "You don't need to give it to me for 3 months." Then he looked at it and he went, "Oh, sorry, I meant the War Lover with Steve McQueen." And I went, "Oh my God!" So that's a totally different film. But I still did the other one for him, and he hasn't used the Warlord yet. But I didn't get paid for it. I just think to myself, well, what else am I going to do? If I'm sitting around, I do like a bit of writing, and like to go and do stuff. And I think what I love about, and it's a shame you guys aren't over. If you ever get over here, you must join us for one of our little get-togethers, because believe me, we have a really good time. We go out for a drink and a curry usually, and we're doing and even when we get people over, we have some great times. We've had some good guests over. Because I've started doing this Dark Fest. It's really, really popular. It is, and the cinema we have is being voted the best London cinema for 2 or 3 years running. It's really, really good. It's very old-fashioned, independent. We take over the upper level of it, and the bar and the kitchen, and we've had people over, and they're quite dubious. I remember we had one year. I had Ruggiero Diodato and Zora Corona. You know who she is? She's the girl who gets hung up by her boobs in Cannibal Ferox or whatever.
Oh man!
So we had her over. She couldn't speak much English. She got a bit annoyed with me. I picked her up from the airport because she was wearing a face mask because it was COVID time, and she said to me, "Don't you wear face masks over here?" I said, "No, we're made of sterner stuff."
You get a lot of ladies to that Dark Fest. You get up, and then with Carolyn.
It's all ladies, isn't it? Yeah, so we're all.
You get the Hummers, right? The Hammers. What did you call them? I heard you call them the Hammers.
Hammer ladies, yeah. We Hammer Glamour. So we got all the Hammer ladies. This year we're bringing over Lynn Lowry, who was in Shivers and stuff like that. But I remember one year we had Linnea Quigley over, and she was very dubious at first, I think, but she made a lot of money. She did really, really well, and she joined us for our curry night and everything. So she was good. And
wow.
So this year we've got Sherry Buchanan as well coming over. I bet you don't come. Anyone of you know who Sherry Buchanan is?
I don't.
To be a specialist on this subject, have you ever seen Zombie Holocaust?
I have.
I've seen every zombie movie there is.
Yeah.
Well, she's in that. She's one of the main stars of that.
Okay. I'll go back and check it out again just to look at her.
And she's American though. She's from Mississippi or something like that.
Hey, Alan, I've seen some real life horror over at London, England. I went on the Jack the Ripper candlelight tour, and I seen Natara, London, which they did a lot of torture, murder, and suicide. Very haunted place.
Well, that's endorsed by the Royals, so that's fine. You can get away.
Well, Alan, you know what you said about the glossy covers. You know, I looked at I used to look at a lot of anime like some guys do, and I look at the magazines. So they have the Korean ones, manhwa. They have the Chinese, and then they have the Japanese. But they have this one Korean manhwa where the covers and the pictures were colored and glossy from cover to cover. And I thought, wow, maybe they're just coming out with their premiere issue. But it was really good. It was some vampires that were regulated by this one entity called Noblesse, and he was more powerful than all of them. And the way they had it dressed and the colors and everything, it caught my attention right away. And they did it every issue like that. And so I was wondering, how could they afford to do it? But they would say, like in most of those animes, hey, we need sponsors, if there's anybody that can draw, and you know, this type of thing, that would advertise a little bit for that. But I noticed, I was going to say to you, I noticed when they tried to do the anime, when they finally got to that point, because a lot of people said, hey, you know, can we see this as an anime, an actual cartoon or whatever? It was hard to translate the script, and you know, because you're not captivated by the gloss of the characters and the page anymore. You know, the colors are bright on TV.